So you want ones that are vetted for addressing the perennial problems. You want so that they can constellate into opponent processing. You want them to layer on top of each other. So you can take a meditation practice, a contemplation practice, and a flow practice like Tai Chi Chuan, and you can integrate them all together so you can realize what's called prajna, which is kind of this flowing inward and outwardness of attention in a parallel simultaneous fashion. And then you also want to have bridging practices that bridge between propositional processing and perspectival processing, like Lectio Divina. So you want to build your process as well, but you want to have a meta practice within the community that constantly evolves how you coordinate and curate your ecology of practices, and that's where dialectic into dialogos works. That's my proposal. And once you get that going, you have communities, and then you network the communities together.
Yeah, so you really need other people for this process, because part of that is being able to overcome your own biases and blind spots as you build a sort of dynamical approach to understanding.
Well, but this is the point. In my friend Greg Enriquez, and also the work of Sperber and Mercier, although I have a lot of criticisms of their book, The Enigma of Reason. But the idea that we work best, it's funny, we work both best and worst in distributed cognition. And that most of when you said we work, we need other people, that's the case for almost, look, I didn't invent English, you didn't invent English, I'm not running the electric grid, I didn't produce these machines, these screens, and it's like all of this is like, that's all distributed cognition. And, from Ed Hutchins on, we've learned to really realize that distributed cognition is where most of our problem solving happens. So you take Plato's metaphor of the ship of state, right? And then you put Ed Hutchins in it. He did the cognition of the wild. He did the ethnography. Who navigates a ship? No one. It's a bunch of people and a bunch of instruments that form a dynamical system that navigate a ship. And Dan Chiappi and I have done the same thing with who moves the rovers around on Mars? No one person. It's a bunch of scientists, a bunch of machines, and the rovers forming a dynamical system that get the rovers to explore Mars. That's how we do everything. Everything good, at least.
Not to be meta about the meta trait, but I asked the question, what do you do? And you say, well, it's not just this one thing, right? You kind of need to stay flexible even in your approach to building the flexibility.
Yep. Well, yeah, but then what you do is I understand your point, but this isn't sort of an individual thing. That's what I'm trying to get. You're not sort of sitting back and saying, like, so for example, when you do like things like circling or what I call dialectic or what I'm building with Guy Senstock, Chris Mitro, dialectic into dialogos. But even in circling, which is one of the sub practices of it, like this amazing things happen. So basically what happens in circling is you get into a distributed flow state. You're not just getting into a flow state because between you and the environment, like the rock climber, the environment is other people. And so you're all scaffolding each other into a sort of a meta flow state. Everybody's flowing and they're all flowing together. And then what happens, first of all, is people rediscover that connectedness. And how they almost always put it is this incredible intimacy, and it's neither economic nor sexual intimacy. It's this other kind of intimacy. And they say things like, I've always wanted this, but I didn't know, which is really interesting. It's like Plato's, we're always just remembering, right? So they get that. But then you get a next stage. What people realize, they start to sense an intimacy with the dynamical system, the collective intelligence that has being expressed and developed within the distributed cognition. And you feel it, like I call it the logos from Greece, dialogos, right? But people from all backgrounds, religious and not, start to talk about it like a spirit. They start to talk about it with religious and sacred language. So it's not just, I'm going to be more flexible. This practice gives you access to the internet gives us the power of collective computation. Dialogos gives us the power of collective intelligence, right? And that's what culture really helps us do. That is what I'm talking about as being the thing that ultimately is the forum, the arena in which we are guided. I don't know if that answered your question, but that's how I'm trying to answer it.
No, that answers my question absolutely, and it just made me think of the Marines. This is effectively what they're trying to build with Marines. The groups of 6 or 7.
Yep.
Is this something that like?
It is, except I would make a distinction, and and I'm talking with Tim Bishop a lot. He came out of the military, but now he's doing is he's building a system, a lot of based on my work by his own admission, right? Where he basically goes into businesses, and instead of doing all the typical thing you do when a business is in trouble, bottom line, new technology, blah blah, he goes in and says, no, your culture is messed up. How do we fix your culture, and how do we get everybody in culture so they're working as a culture again? And he's having massive success with that, right? And so the thing about the military is Durkheim made a distinction between mechanical solidarity, in which you get people like in sync by trying to get them as homogeneously the same as possible, right? Or you do what he called the division of labor. What you do is you have a very complex system that is capable of complexifying itself. So it's both highly diverse and highly integrated, and it's dynamically complexifying itself. And the thing about that, and the military tries to get both of those, and that's the difficult problem. And I'm actually proposing the second. The second is what happens in Dialogos. You don't realize, hey, we're all the same in Kumbaya. What you get is, wow, that person is really mysterious to me, and yet I'm intimately connected to them, and their mystery calls to my mystery, and I didn't realize this about me, and we co-emerge together.